Internet crimes against children, ICAC, you'll hear me refer to ICAC over and over. When I say ICAC, I'm referring to internet crimes against children. While not specifically related to human trafficking, there is a ton of overlap in human trafficking. And so while we have a unit within the SBI that does human trafficking stuff, within my unit, we do computer crimes, but really about 98 or 99% of what we do is internet crimes against children. So let me give you a little bit of an overview of ICAC, what it is, kind of where our tips come from, kind of what we do, things like that. So that slide doesn't look good, but it looked great when we had the animations. The ICAC program is a nationally funded program that's run through the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. There's about 5,400 agencies across the country that are a part of it, but really think about it breaking down into 61. That's what the map over on the right is for. There's 61 regional task forces. They're pretty much broken down one per state. So for North Carolina, the SBI is that task force agency. And then from that, we run a statewide task force that is about 230 or so agencies. So just to give you some contact information, those are the agents that work within our unit, within our computer crimes unit, and that's their phone numbers, that's the counties they're responsible for. So from wherever you're from, if you need to get in touch with someone related to an internet crimes against children issue, they can be your point of contact. But I also quickly say right behind that, because a lot of people when they see that slide or hear me show that slide or whatever, that this is our ICAC task force, and really it's not, because this is the agencies that we work with every single day. These are, and it's hard to see up there because there's so many, right? But these are the police departments and sheriff's departments across the state that are really the backbone of this task force. So we talk about cyber tips for a minute. We'll get into what a cyber tip is in a second, but you see this trend that up until about 2019, slight increases in cyber tips year over year. Little increase, that's to be expected. But you see this spike start happening in 2020, 2021, up through 2024. So let's narrow this down. Let's just talk about that time frame there. 2019 is the year I refer to as the last year of normal. But what you'll see in the highlighted month there is in March and April of 2020. What was going on then? Yeah, COVID, right? So we take all the kids out of classrooms and we put them in virtual learning. We take all these people out of offices and we put them in remote workspaces. And literally we have more people on the internet at the same time than ever before in the history of the world. So it makes sense that cyber tips go up. I hadn't told you what a cyber tip is, but common sense, you can tell you cyber and tip, right? We know we're talking about online stuff. So obviously, more people online means more tips. So we almost saw our tips double overnight in that March and April time frame of 2020. That made total sense. What hasn't made sense is that they've continued to go up and continue to go up and continue to go up. And the second block there highlighted, in July of this year, September of this year, we were over 5,000 tips both of those months. If you look back up to 2019, that's more than we received in the entire year of 2019. We're receiving in a month now. And I'll go ahead and, spoiler alert, I don't have the number, but as of this morning, it was about 5,200 or 5,300 for the month of October, and we're not quite done yet. So by the end of the day, we'll set yet another new record for the number of cyber tips received. So with all of that, what is a cyber tip? Cyber tips comes from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. There is a federal mandate for networks out there that if they find what they believe to be child exploitation or child solicitation on their networks, or anybody in the public, if they come across where they believe a child is being solicited in some way or exploited in some way, they can file a report with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. You'll hear me refer to NCMEC. So if I say NCMEC, I'm referring to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They run the cyber tip line. So you can see that it is the nation's centralized reporting system for online exploitation of children. Public and electronic service providers can both contribute to this. What we see is that the vast majority of those come from those electronic service providers. And you see all the different categories there, the different report types that can be reported to the cyber tip line. So then what happens? It comes into the cyber tip line. What do? I mentioned those 61 task forces a little bit earlier, breaking down pretty much one per state. So when the information comes in, they look at where do we believe this person is, whether that's the suspect or whether that's the victim. Where do we think this person is? And that can be based on a variety of things. Maybe it's the zip code in their registration. Maybe it's the area code in their telephone number. Hopefully, more often, it is the IP address. If you don't know what an IP address is, it is how you communicate on the internet. Everybody communicating on the internet has to have an IP address. IP addresses can be geolocated, so we get a good idea of where they are. So we use that information, and everything that is believed to have ties to North Carolina comes to the SBI. We review it and then work with our task force across the state to investigate that. So what kind of numbers are we talking about nationally or globally, really, when it comes to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children? That top right-hand corner, there were 62 million reports to the Cybertip line just in 2024. So we're talking about a ton. And again, this is a global thing. This is not just a U.S. thing. So every platform that reports, obviously the internet is global, right? And so when they report that, it may be that they're in some other foreign country. You can see the kind of the breakdown in that. Whether it's child pornography, we still use the term child pornography in this, and it's still a category type. I'll just be honest with you, I don't like the term and try not to use the term. However, it is still in our federal legislation, so we have to use that term. But I think child pornography has a lot of problems with that naming convention. So generally we say child sexual exploitation or child sex abuse material, CSAM sometimes you'll hear it referred to as. But that is by far the highest report type there, the highest number of type of report. But you'll see the second one down there, online enticement, the second highest, online enticement for children for sexual acts. That, although it's dramatically below, it has been increasing exponentially in the last few years. And we'll get into that a little bit more in the breakout side of things of why we're seeing that, what we're seeing the most of. I'll touch on it here for a second. But really, we'll dig into that a little bit more. So cyber tips, we think of the creepy, dark places on the web as usually where we think a cyber tip would come from, but really it doesn't. Because last year, you'll see the slide doesn't quite work out perfectly, but over 70% of those on the right, so your Instagram, Facebook, Google, Snapchat, those 6 providers on the right accounted for more than 70% of the cyber tips that we receive. And so how many of you have a Facebook account? Okay, everybody raise your hand, right? How many of you have an Instagram? Most of you raise your hand. How many have a Snapchat account? Most of you are going to raise your hand. So you interact with it daily, and yet you don't see this problem, so how does that happen? And so sometimes I get that, like we do parent presentations and other civic presentations, and they're like, well, what's going on? Why do we have... I don't see that when I'm on Facebook every day. So we'll dig into that a little bit more, maybe talk about ways to stay safer online when we're engaging with these platforms, because that definitely is where the bulk of our tips are coming from, and certainly is a dangerous place. Not going to bash social media. There's certainly a positive side to it. It's neither good nor evil, but I can assure you it is used for a lot of evil, and we see that regularly. So this year in North Carolina, here's kind of what we've seen that breakdown so far as of October 20th, so about 10 days ago. This is what we saw. We've processed around 30,000 tips or so. But the point of the slide is Instagram has been 8,500 of those. You can see the vast majority, huge head and shoulders above the rest is Instagram, then Snapchat, then TikTok, Discord. So again, just kind of driving home that point of electronic service providers that we see and interact with every single day. I've got an Instagram account. I scroll through it and I like things and post things and whatever. And yet I don't interact with this material on my Instagram account, but a lot of people do, and the content for sure is very, very, very much there. So we'll dig into that a little bit more. But this really is what we're scared of. Let's just be honest about it. Generative AI, artificial intelligence. And so we've seen just in the 23 to 24, a 1,325% increase of what's being reported to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So what do you think is happening in 2025? Yeah, it's substantially higher yet again. And what's going to happen in 2026? Where is this going? And what can we do about it? What are the dangers and problems that we're seeing with it? Because it definitely is a problem for us, for sure. So sextortion, this will be a topic that we'll talk about quite a bit. That's one of the biggest reasons that we've seen this huge increase in the online exploitation side of it. Sextortion, we've seen a huge spike in it in the last little bit. So much so that 100 reports of financial sextortion a day in 2024 coming into the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And what you see is over on the right, that 36 plus, is that at the time this slide was created, we knew of at least 36 suicides because of financial sextortion. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. This slide doesn't animate, but it goes through just a bunch of headlines, just boom, 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 headline after headline after headline after headline after headline of victims, essentially, in the financial sextortion space. But I stopped with these two. These are the last two on this slide, because what you'll notice is, who are these two kids? They're football players. Do you think that they are the down and outcast of their school that sit in the corner by themselves? No, they're the popular kids. They're the athletes. They're the star musician, the star person that's on the stage. They're the most bubbly person. They're the most outgoing. What does that result in most of the time? They have the most followers. They have the most friends. They have the most connections online. So when it comes to sextortion, when they become the victim, that also means they have the most to lose. So what are they willing to do when they're in that situation? Almost anything. And unfortunately, that leads to them feeling like there is no other way out, and too many have made the choice of taking their own life rather than face up to what they have done. So my biggest push in talking about sextortion recently is we have to get the information out there to our kids ahead of time, because these conversations generally, in a matter of minutes, go from, hey, how are you, to you're done, you're a victim. What are you going to do about it? And if they don't have the resources in advance, they're not going to know what to do. And so we have to push we have to push the information. We have to push the information, give it to them. There's a way out, there's a way out, there's a way out. And they're sitting there going, yeah, I don't need to know this. It's never going to happen to me. I don't need to know this. Never going to happen to me. And then all of a sudden, when it does happen, they've heard it before, and they know there is help, there is a way out, and they can make a better decision. And so that's one of my biggest pushes when I speak to people recently, is on the prevention side of that. Not that, to an extent that we're going to prevent it from happening, but more giving them the resources in advance so that when there is a problem, they know resources exist. And I think that's a struggle, getting it to our kids right now, and I think we can do a better job at that. A couple of numbers here. Actually, there's a lot of numbers on the screen, but just a couple I'm going to point out to you. Number one is the side of this that in this particular space, in this sextortion space, you'll see that the vast majority, significant more, are male victims. That's something we hadn't seen in the past, and I don't have but a couple of minutes here, so we'll go into that just a little bit deeper, maybe of why that is or what that is in a breakout. We'll talk about it a little bit more, because I'll kind of run back through some of these same slides. But then also down here, 17% were younger than the age of 12 when they were first sextorted. So again, we've seen that number get lower and lower and lower. And when are we putting the devices in kids' hands? At a younger and younger and younger age. So that's what we're seeing. The other thing, the other 17%, on the far, far right at the bottom, only 17% are reported to law enforcement. So those are the ones that we know about. How many do we not know about? And what are we not able to do anything about? Because only such a small number is actually being reported to us. I won't take but a second to talk about this, but there is a movie put out. It's called The Hidden Pandemic of Sextortion. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend it. It's a great movie. It is a edge-of-your-seat thriller type of story. It goes really, really well. I would use the word, the D word, documentary, because that's kind of what it is, but it really is a edge-of-your-seat type of story that goes into a real-life sextortion case. It occurred in Virginia. The Virginia ICAC there, my counterpart that works in Virginia, him and his team are a part of this story as it's being told, and it works its way through a real-life situation. One of the reasons I recommend it is for you. It would be great, just watch it and whatever. But if you've got kids, if you've got a niece, a nephew, if you've got whatever, watch it with them. I've talked with the producer of this movie numerous times, and he said when he put it together, he had a 10-year-old, and he wanted his 10-year-old to be able to watch this movie. And so it is a great conversation starter. Sit down, watch the movie. It's interesting. It's got fighter pilots in it, and also, so it's like interesting to watch. And then at the end of the movie, automatically that opens up the conversation to where you would have been really awkwardly getting that conversation otherwise. So it's a great conversation starter to use that space. A couple other things I'll just hit really quickly because my counter is red and going quick. So the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children resources, we'll talk about some of those resources that are available to you. What do you do? How do you get help? And then I'm being blackmailed. What do I do? Some of the resources that are there, things that we can do about that. Red flag warnings, like what do we look for? How do we know? What do we tell our kids? These are problems. When you see this happening, run, and why. And then, again, another resource. I'm being the victim of sextortion. I'm being sextorted. What can I do about it? And, again, one of my biggest pushes is to get this out to the kids in advance of that so that they know that there's another option when this happens to them or one of their friends. Because statistically speaking, it's likely that many of you sitting in this room are going to have somebody you know that is going to be the victim of sextortion, because that's just what the numbers tell us these days. So join me in the breakout. We'll go into deeper information on a lot of these slides right here. Thanks.